My hands trembled as I held the envelope, my name scrawled across it in jagged handwriting. I didn't recognize the writing, but the words inside cut deep. Your husband is not who you think he is. Ask him about Elise. Elise. My mind raced, my heart pounding. Derek wouldn't, he couldn't. I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling. Jenna, it's me. We need to talk now. I paced the living room, bile rising in my throat as I waited for her to arrive. This had to be a sick prank, a cruel joke. Derek and I had our troubles, but he'd never betray me like this. Would he? Jenna burst through the front door, face etched with concern. What's going on? What's happened? Wordlessly, I handed her the note. She scanned it quickly, eyes widening. Who sent this? I don't know. It just arrived today. Jenna guided me to the couch. Breathe, hon. We'll figure this out. Anger flared suddenly. Figure what out? That my husband's screwing around behind my back with someone named Elise? Jenna squeezed my hand. You don't know anything yet. This could just be a fake letter trying to cause trouble. I sighed, my rage dissolving. You're right. I can't believe he'd do this to me. Not after everything. Not after the infidelity years ago. The counseling, his remorse, the promise we'd never go through that again. Jenna pursed her lips. I'll ask Alex to look into it, discreetly. If anything turns up, I swallowed hard. Did I even want to know? The next few weeks crawled by in agonizing slow motion. I scrutinized Derek's every move, looking for cracks in his routine. He seemed the same as always, if a bit distracted. More anonymous letters arrived, hinting at secrets. Elise's name echoed in my mind. Alex uncovered the first clues. Records of lavish gifts, a paper trail linking Derek and someone named E. Montgomery, but no concrete evidence of an affair, until the phone records. Late-night calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, thousands of them over the past 6 months. No way it was for business. Rage simmered in my veins. How could he do this to us? After everything we'd survived? I confronted Derek one night after work, casting aside pretense. Who is she, Derek? He froze. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Who's Elise? Are you sleeping with her? Panic flitted across his face. No, of course not. There's no one else, I swear. I slammed the phone records down. Then explain this. Explain the gifts you sent her, the trips you took together. Explain the constant calls and texts behind my back. Derek paled. Marlene, please. My hands clenched. How long, Derek? How long have you been lying to me, betraying our vows, making a fool of me? Tears filled his eyes. I never meant. I love you, Marlene. Please let me fix this. I turned away, disgusted. Save it. I'm done with your lies. I had my proof now. My husband's betrayal laid bare. This was only the beginning. I would make him pay for every sleepless night, every moment he made me doubt myself, for breaking vows and my heart all over again. Derek would regret the day he ever heard the name Elise. How could he do this to me again? I fumed, pacing Jenna's living room. Jenna perched on the couch, lips pressed in a thin line. Derek's always been selfish. I warned you when you took him back the first time. I whirled to face her. I thought he'd changed. I thought our marriage meant something to him. Clearly it didn't. Alex's voice was grim. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Jenna shot him a look before turning back to me. What matters now is how you want to handle this. Derek betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. If you want to walk away... Oh, I'm not walking away, I cut in. I'm going to make him pay. Alex raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? I took a deep breath. I want to hit him where it hurts. I know things about Derek, secrets he's tried very hard to hide. Like the debt he'd racked up trying to climb the corporate ladder. All those business trips that were just excuses to gamble. I think it's time his pretty little mistress learned the truth about the man she's been spin-screwing. My voice dripped contempt. Once I expose who Derek really is, his affair with Elise will implode. Then I'll take him for everything he's worth. Jenna nodded slowly. All right, if you're sure this is what you want. I've never been more sure of anything. We ironed out a plan over the next few weeks, gathered every shred of evidence about the affair and Derek's lies. Elise thought she was sleeping with an ambitious executive. I couldn't wait to shatter that illusion. I bided my time, pretending I knew nothing, acted the dutiful wife while Derek carried on behind my back. Finally, the perfect opportunity arose, a family dinner at Derek's parents' country club. His parents had always thought I was beneath their precious son. Time to show them how wrong they were. I wore Derek's favorite black dress, wanting to look every inch the calm, confident wife. His parents greeted me with thin smiles and tight hugs. We sat down to dinner, the air simmering with tension. I made idle small talk, waiting for the right moment. Finally, when a lull hit midway through the main course, I struck. "Derek, don't you have some news for your parents?" I kept my tone light and sweet. Derek's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What are you talking about?" I tilted my head. "Oh, I just thought you might want to tell them about the new baby on the way. They're going to be grandparents after all." His mother gasped. "A baby? But why wouldn't you tell us?" I turned to her with mocking sympathy. I'm sure Derek was just waiting for the right time, though it is a bit tricky since the mother is his mistress, Elise. Chaos erupted. Derek sputtered denials while his parents shouted recriminations. I sat back and watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. Finally, I slammed my hands on the table, silencing the room. I nudged Derek with contempt. "Go on, then. Tell them. Tell them what a lying, cheating failure you are." Derek shrank under my glare. When he stayed silent, I continued, relishing every word. "You want to know who your son really is? A liar, a fraud, up to his eyeballs in gambling debt. He used company money to finance trysts with his little whore." I slapped the proof down in front of his ashen parents. "So much for your perfect son, but I'm done covering for him. We're over, Derek. I quit." Let his house of cards collapse. I would be there to watch it crumble with a smile on my face. The fallout from the family dinner was swift and severe. Derek bombarded my phone with texts and voicemails, begging for another chance. His parents cut off contact completely, no doubt mortified by their son's disgrace. I ignored it all, refusing to let them guilt me into silence. They made their choices. Now they would face the consequences. The anonymous letters kept coming, hinting at secrets only Derek's mistress could know. I added them to the mounting pile of evidence. Soon, I would have enough to bury them both. I dove back into work, determined not to let Derek's betrayal affect my performance. The office rumor mill churned with speculation about my failing marriage and Derek's tawdry affair. I held my head high through it all. Let them talk. I had nothing to hide. Weeks later, Jenna called with an urgent discovery. "That mistress of Derek's? Her name's not Elise. It's Lisa. Lisa Montgomery." My breath caught. "Montgomery? As in Silas Montgomery?" Silas headed Montgomery Holdings, one of our biggest rivals. If Derek was sleeping with his daughter... "This goes deeper than we thought," Jenna said grimly. "Derek wasn't just cheating on you. He was using your marriage to get close to Montgomery Holdings through Lisa." Red-hot rage flooded me. My hands curled into fists. Bad enough Derek betrayed our vows again. He'd also jeopardized my career and reputation for his own gain. "That bastard," I seethed. "He doesn't just want to destroy our marriage, he wants to destroy me." "We're not going to let that happen." Jenna's voice hardened. "I've been digging into Montgomery Holdings. They're not as clean as they pretend to be." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say they have their fair share of skeletons. If this affair goes public, it could take down both Derek and Montgomery." I remembered Silas Montgomery's smug smile at the last trade conference, so assured of his dominance over my family's company. The thought of watching his empire crumble along with Derek's made my blood sing. "Do it," I told Jenna. "Full nuclear exposure. I want everyone to see their lies." I felt a perverse thrill making the plans, like pieces slotting into place. All those years bowing and scraping to get ahead, and for what? Men like Derek and Silas who used and abused anyone foolish enough to trust them. No more. I was done playing nice. The anonymous notes kept arriving, each more ominous than the last. Threats about what would happen if I didn't back down. Lisa clearly realized I wasn't going away quietly. I added the letters to the stack of evidence. Let Derek and his mistress threaten all they wanted. They couldn't intimidate me into silence. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I felt fully empowered. I walked taller, spoke up louder. Derek's betrayal had lit a fire in me, forged me into someone new, someone who wouldn't be pushed around or dismissed. Let them keep underestimating me. They had no idea what was coming. The day of reckoning had arrived. I woke up energized, ready to finally confront Derek and expose his lies. I dressed for battle, in a sharp black pantsuit and heels. Slicked on bold, red lipstick, armor against whatever vitriol Derek threw at me. I felt strong, unbreakable. At the office, I breezed through my morning meetings, anticipation thrumming under my cool exterior. I messaged Jenna and Alex. It's time. During lunch, I asked Derek to meet me in a private conference room. He arrived looking guarded, clearly expecting me to grovel. Not this time. I slid a file folder across the table. Do you know what this is? Derek eyed me warily as he opened it, then paled. Where did you get these? I smiled coldly. Records of all your little trips to the casino, the ones you claimed were for business, gambling away company money to fund your habit. I slapped down another folder. And let's not forget the mountain of debt you've accumulated. Tell me, does your mistress Lisa know about your financial issues? Or did you lie to her like you lied to me? Derek shoved back his chair. Enough. I won't sit here and listen to these outrageous accusations. My hand shot out, clutching his wrist. Oh no, you're going to sit here and listen to every word, unless you want these files leaked to the board. I held his gaze. Well? Sweat beaded his forehead. Slowly, he sat back down. I smiled, all ice. That's what I thought. I slid the divorce papers across the table. Derek stared at them, dumbstruck. Sign them. This marriage is over and you know it. When he still hesitated, I pressed harder. Come on, Derek. Sign the papers so you can run to Lisa with a clear conscience. She is pregnant, isn't she? His head jerked up, eyes wide with shock. I waved a hand. Oh, please. You didn't actually think I was ignorant about your affair this whole time, did you? I leaned forward. Now sign, or everyone we know will find out exactly what kind of man they married. Your choice. With shaking hands, Derek scrawled his signature on the paperwork. I gathered the file folders and stood abruptly. Our lawyers will be in touch about the divorce settlement. Don't even think of trying to screw me over, Derek. You know I can and will destroy you if you do. I walked steadily from the room, head high. The confrontation had gone even better than I planned. Now for the final blow. At dinner that evening, I sat waiting with Jenna and Alex. Derek's parents arrived first, both tense. When Derek joined us, I shared a knowing look with Jenna. Time to light the final fire. We made it through the salad course before I broke the silence. Well, Derek, don't you have an announcement for your parents? Derek paled. Before he could respond, I continued cheerfully. Derek's going to be a father. Isn't that lovely news? A hush fell over the table. Then came the explosion. Derek's parents shouted and raged as Derek sat, condemned. I watched it all with grim satisfaction, the inferno I'd stoked consuming them completely. Finally I stood, silencing the room. I faced my in-laws, triumph surging through me. You're welcome to the cheating mess of a son you raised. Consider this my official resignation from this family. I'm done covering for him. I strode out without looking back, Derek's shouts echoing behind me. I'd laid waste to everything he valued. Now to focus on building myself back up from the ashes. The fallout from my confrontation with Derek was immediate. He blew up my phone, leaving pleading voicemails and apologetic texts. His parents called too, demanding I reconsider. I ignored them all. The time for mercy was over. Jenna came over to debrief. That was an epic takedown. How are you holding up? I sighed. Relieved it's finally out in the open, but I want to make sure he doesn't get away with this. She nodded. What do you need from me? I want to go after Derek financially in the divorce, bleed him dry, and I want to destroy his reputation. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Playing hardball, I like it. I can start drafting aggressive terms for the settlement. Good, he doesn't get to walk away from this unscathed. My phone buzzed with yet another pleading message from Derek. Delete. What about his mistress Lisa? Jenna asked. Any plans there? I smiled slowly. Oh yes. She wanted Derek so badly, she can have what's left of him. I'd spent years buried under Derek's lies. Never again. From now on, people would know exactly who they were dealing with. While Jenna handled the legal side, Alex and I planned Derek's social downfall. A few anonymous tips later, and the story of his tawdry affair and excessive gambling spread like wildfire through the office gossip channels. Derek was promptly placed on leave, pending an ethics investigation. I saved the damning evidence to leak publicly, if needed. With Derek's reputation in tatters, I asked Alex to dig deeper on Lisa. There had to be more ammunition we could use against her. Sure enough, he uncovered her damaging history as a homewrecker. Other affairs, broken engagements, manipulated men. She was a predator, and Derek her latest prey. Armed with the information, I reached out to her directly for the first time. Lisa, we need to talk, woman to woman. She agreed to meet for coffee. As we sat staring at each other over lattes, I felt only cold contempt for the woman sitting across from me. Calculating, manipulative, cruel. She and Derek deserved each other. I slid a file over to her. I assume you know who I am. Lisa glanced through the photos and records inside, then paled. Where did you get these? That's not important. What is important is that you stay away from my husband. She stiffened. Ex-husband. And I'll do as I please. I leaned forward. I know women like you, Lisa. You target married men to satisfy some twisted need for power. I'm sure Derek spun quite the tale to get in your bed. I tapped the file. But lies don't hold up forever. The truth has a way of coming out. I held her gaze. Leave Derek. Focus on that baby, if it's even his, because if you don't, everyone you've ever crossed paths with will learn exactly what kind of person you are. I guarantee it. I left a shaken Lisa behind. Let her worry Derek would learn the truth, too. I wanted her constantly looking over her shoulder, like I'd had to do. Jenna was right. Playing hardball felt good. Taking back my power, exposing the ugliness Derek tried to hide, felt damn near euphoric. No more being the dutiful, forgiving wife. That woman died the day I learned Derek betrayed me again. Now someone new had risen from her ashes, someone who would never be used or dismissed again. I had been reborn, and it was time for my new life to begin. After exposing Derek's lies, I finally felt free. No more constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next betrayal would come. It was liberating. The divorce proceedings advanced swiftly with the mountain of evidence against Derek. My lawyer assured me I'd get everything I asked for in the settlement. Derek didn't stand a chance. His mom still called frequently, pleading with me to give her son another chance. I blocked her number. They'd all shown their true colors. Now, they could live with the consequences. A few weeks later, Jenna called me grimly. We have a problem. Lisa's still in the picture. Derek convinced her the baby is his. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course he did. Derek could charm his way out of anything when backed into a corner. She's pressuring him to get shared custody in the divorce, Jenna continued. Playing happy new family. An icy rage filled me. So they thought they could try and play me, even now? Like hell. Set up a family dinner. Here, I want them all under one roof. Time for the final reckoning with Derek, Lisa, and his toxic parents. No more manipulating shadows, everything out in the open. On the night, I dressed in black armor again, bold red lipstick my war paint. Jenna and Alex arrived first, grimly determined. Right on time, Derek walked in with his parents flanking him on either side. Lisa trailed behind, wearing a dress stretched tight over her swollen belly. I greeted them with a shark-like smile. So nice to have the whole family together again. We sat, tension simmering. I kept the conversation light, biding my time, waiting until the main course was served before dropping my first verbal bomb. Lisa, you're positively glowing. When are you due? She blinked, hand going instinctively to her belly. Early next month. How exciting. Derek must be thrilled to welcome his first child. Across the table, Derek paled. Lisa shifted in her seat. Yes, well, we're both very happy. I'm sure, I smiled pleasantly. Though didn't you tell me you two only started seeing each other last fall? What an accelerated timeline. The table went silent. Lisa's eyes widened fractionally. Gotcha. Derek's mom recovered first. That's enough now, Marlene. Stop these ugly accusations. I ignored her, focusing on Lisa. Sweetie, surely you're aware Derek was still very much with me when you supposedly got pregnant? I hope he at least told you the truth about our relationship timeline. You lying bitch, Derek spat. Don't pretend our marriage was some happy fantasy. You checked out years ago. I shook my head. And whose fault was that, Derek? Or have you forgotten your chronic habit of screwing anything that walks? Chaos erupted. Lisa accused Derek of deceit. He shouted desperately, appealing to his parents for backup. They in turn screamed at me for causing a scene. Finally, I slammed my hand down, fed up. Enough, I'm done with the lies. I locked eyes with Lisa. That baby is not his. Stunned silence. Lisa's hand clutched her belly. How dare you? I tossed the paternity test results down with a thwop, watching the color drain from Derek's face. No more hiding. Lisa dissolved into tears. Derek vehemently denied it, but I could see the truth dawning in his eyes. They'd tried to play me, and lost. Badly. Checkmate. I stood up calmly and addressed Lisa. You want Derek? You can keep him, but this ends tonight. We're done. I turned and strode away, finally free. Let Derek and Lisa turn on each other. My hands were clean. The family dinner felt like a tipping point. After exposing Lisa's lies, it was all finally crumbling for her and Derek. Lisa disappeared from the social scene, no doubt embarrassed by the entire affair. Derek bombarded me with angry texts, but I stood firm. We were over. Professionally, things shifted in my favor, too. With Derek disgraced, upper management started relying on me more. I stepped up, determined to prove myself. A few weeks later, Jenna called me excitedly. "You're never going to believe who just reached out to me." "Who?" "Liam Montgomery, Lisa's ex-husband." I sat up straighter. This was an interesting development. What did he want? "To talk to you. Apparently you two have a common enemy." I considered this. Liam had divorced Lisa years earlier under mysterious circumstances. If anyone knew secrets I could use against her, it was him. Set up a meeting, but discreetly. If word got back to Derek or Lisa... Jenna agreed. "I'll handle it. This could be the ammunition we need to finally shut them down for good." We met Liam at a small cafe downtown. I studied the handsome, well-dressed man as he approached. He had a wounded air about him, despite the tailored suit and easy smile. "Marlene, thank you for meeting me." We exchanged pleasantries before I cut to the chase. "What do you want with me, Liam?" His face darkened. "Straight to business. I appreciate that. We have a common enemy in your husband and my ex-wife." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "I have information that could ruin them both socially and professionally, but I'll only share if we work together." I considered his offer. Liam had resources and insider access at his family's company. Combined with my evidence against Derek, we could inflict real damage. I extended my hand. "You have a deal." Liam broke into a sharp grin. "Excellent." We hashed out a plan to strategically leak information about Derek's unethical behavior and Lisa's sordid history. A coordinated takedown. Within days, the gossip rags were buzzing with sordid rumors about Derek's gambling and Lisa's affairs. The business journals questioned shady dealings at Montgomery Holdings. Their reputations were being shredded. But I wasn't done yet. Liam came through with one final bombshell. Evidence linking Lisa and Derek to corporate espionage against my family's company. Enough proof for authorities to get involved. I called an emergency meeting with the executives and board members, Liam by my side. As we presented the damaging documents, outrage erupted around the room. Derek's treachery went deeper than any of us realized. He'd abused his position to undercut the very company that had given him a career. The board immediately voted to fire Derek and pursue criminal charges. Justice was finally being served. As we left the meeting, Liam turned to me. "I know this was about revenge for you, but I wanted to say thank you. Exposing Lisa and Derek, it brought me closure too." I saw the sincerity in his eyes. Liam hadn't just been motivated by payback. He needed to regain control after Lisa destroyed his life too. I understood completely. "Of course. And thank you for having the courage to come forward. I'm just sorry you got caught in Lisa's web, too." Liam nodded, looking thoughtful. "You know, now that it's all over, maybe we could get dinner sometime." I considered him handsome, successful, principled. A man I knew I could trust. "I'd like that," I replied, and I meant it. With Derek ruined professionally and Lisa in hiding, I decided to make my final move, seizing control of the company from Derek's family. As acting head of the business, I reviewed operations with a critical eye, building an airtight case for mismanagement under my father-in-law's leadership. With Liam's help, I also uncovered financial irregularities suggesting embezzlement. The old guard had been bleeding the company dry for years. No more. I called an emergency shareholders meeting and presented the damning evidence. When I proposed a vote of no confidence in the current leadership, the motion passed swiftly. The board named me as interim CEO. After the meeting, I stopped by my father-in-law's office. He sat grimly packing his possessions into a box. "I hope you're satisfied, taking everything from our family." His voice shook with bitterness. I tilted my head. "Satisfied? No, I won't be satisfied until your toxic son is permanently out of my life." My father-in-law slammed his fists on the desk. "Damn you, Marlene. Derek loved you." I laughed coldly. "Loved me? Is that what you call his chronic affairs and betrayals?" I leaned in close, punctuating each word. "He never loved me." With that, I walked out, leaving the old man fuming impotently. One chapter closed. With the company secure, I turned my attention to finalizing the divorce. My lawyer was ruthlessly efficient, securing me the house, investments, and a generous settlement in return for keeping Derek's misdeeds quiet. The day the papers were signed, I invited Jenna over to celebrate. I raised a glass. Here's to new beginnings. She clinked her glass against mine. To new beginnings, and Marlene 2.0, who takes no shot from anyone. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Derek was finally out of my life for good. Marlene 2.0, I liked the sound of that. A few weeks later, Liam took me out to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Over wine and candlelight, our talk turned serious. I have to confess, I had an ulterior motive asking you here tonight, Liam said. I want to make this, us, official. He took my hands in his. You are an extraordinary woman, Marlene. I know we started off with revenge in common, but what I feel goes so much deeper now. I looked into his earnest eyes and saw genuine emotion there, a real second chance. I feel the same way, I confessed. I tried to deny it at first, but you've shown me I can love and trust again. I want that future with you. Liam broke into a smile. Then let's build it together. The next day, he accompanied me to Derek's mother's palatial estate. I handed her a copy of the divorce decree. It's done. Your son is dead to me now in every way. I trust there will be no further contact from any of you. My former mother-in-law glared. You'll regret this, Marlene. I glanced at Liam and squeezed his hand. No, I don't think I will, but Derek will, for the rest of his life. We walked out together into the sunshine, leaving the toxic past behind. I had everything I needed right beside me. The story of my marriage's ugly implosion made headlines for a while, but I held my head high through the gossip and whispers. I had nothing to hide anymore. In time, new scandals seized the public's attention. My reputation recovered, stronger than ever. With Liam as my partner, I transformed the company into a thriving modern business, and I took my rightful place as CEO on my own terms. My past self was gone, a distant memory. Now a powerful, unstoppable woman had risen in her place. Unbreakable, unstoppable, unleashed at last. This was my time now.
You can't even do household chores, so we might as well divorce, and you better give me your assets too. As soon as he entered a hospital room, Tom said this to me with a smirk, even though I was connected to many tubes. A girl I didn't recognize stood by his side. Tom doesn't know that I have assets worth $6 million. He should understand that a divorce in this situation would be a matter of life and death for a housewife like me. Fine, he has the divorce papers. I couldn't be with a man who verbally abused his wife in such a state. I pulled out the divorce papers I always carried with me and handed them to Tom, grinning. He accepted them. Now I can say goodbye to you. I'll be happy with her, so don't worry, right, Catherine? Saying this, Tom wrapped his arm around that girl's waist, that girl referred to as Catherine Linden, and sneered at me. Take care, Mrs. Oh, you're not Mrs. anymore. Take care, ma'am. At her words, the two of them left the hospital room laughing. But their happiness would only last for now. Alone in the room, I laughed out loud. Today is Friday, so the divorce will be processed on Monday. Oh, I cannot wait for 3 days from now. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm a 45-year-old housewife. My family runs a regular farm. I don't have any particular skills, but the one thing I'm proud of is my vast cooking repertoire. My husband, Tom, is the same age as me, and we were college classmates. Both of us came to New York from the countryside. Since we both lived alone, I used to cook various dishes for Tom using the vegetables and rice sent from my family. People often said I had captured his heart through his stomach, and I was aware of that. Tom was and still is incapable of doing any household chores. I've been taking care of him since we were dating, and after getting married, I continued to handle all household tasks. Sadly, we were not blessed with children, but we enjoyed our life together as a couple. We both loved to eat, and on Tom's days off, we'd often go on drives for small trips just to enjoy delicious food. When we first got married, Tom was kind, but about 3 years in, he became quite controlling. While he never laid a hand on me, his remarks became curt, and he would often say, Whose money do you think we're living on? It would be a lie to say those words didn't hurt, but I didn't have the energy to fight back, assuming he wouldn't listen anyway. Because I was a full-time housewife, I felt inferior and couldn't stand up to him. Tom joined a renowned company after graduating from university, but he resigned after about 5 years. He quickly found new jobs, but would resign from them after short periods. Because of this, our income was unstable. We managed by searching for money-saving tips, but often struggled with our finances. However, at the company he'd been with for the past 2 years, he seemed to get along with his colleagues. I had faint hopes that he might work there for a long time. Then one day, Tom came home earlier than usual. "I'm home. I quit my job." "What, again?" Unintentionally, I voiced my surprise, causing Tom's eyebrows to twitch. In a panic, I stopped cooking and rushed over to him. "I'm sorry. I was just shocked." "Huh. No welcome back greeting, and you're criticizing what I do. You've become quite audacious." At Tom's words, I stiffened. Tom was in a very bad mood today. If I misspoke, it could escalate into something worse. "I'm sorry." "As long as you understand." It seemed my apology had somewhat placated him. With a display of his displeasure, Tom sat on the sofa and turned on the TV. I quietly placed the beer and glass on the table. "Do you want dinner or bath?" "Food and alcohol." "Understood." To avoid upsetting Tom, I played the role of submissive wife. I once had a strong sense of self, but after 14 years of marriage to Tom since the age of 28, I rarely showed my true self. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Tom fell asleep snoring on the sofa. The table was so messy, it looked like a child had eaten there. I cleaned up the fallen beer bottles and food scraps scattered on the floor. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Recalling my dreams of a happy married life from my girlhood days, my true feelings slipped out as I glanced at Tom suddenly, but he showed no signs of waking. Relief washed over me, but I also felt dread about continuing this life. Perhaps I should consider divorce. I began mentally organizing my schedule for the next day, determined to confront the issues I had been avoiding. The next day, Tom started visiting the employment office and quickly secured another job. While he was job hunting, I went to the city office and signed divorce papers. I wasn't ready to submit them, but I thought having them would be a kind of protection. I hid the signed divorce papers at the bottom of my frequently used bag. If he discovered them, there's no telling what he might say or do. "Hey, where did you wander off to while I was job hunting?" Tom asked upon my return. "I went to the stationery store to buy some resumes. Look, I thought you might need them," I replied. "Well, I knew you were unusually thoughtful today," Tom said, initially interrogating me suspiciously, but quickly cheering up. I handed him the resumes I had previously bought. After receiving them, Tom said he was going out for drinks with a friend and left. Tom's new job was at a reputable company with a solid salary and better benefits than anywhere he'd worked before. When he got promoted after working there for about 3 years, he happily had a drink at night. I secretly hoped that maybe this time he would work there until retirement. Tom's department seemed to be in sales, and he started to leave home more frequently for evening entertainment. I enjoyed my brief moments of freedom and gathered energy to greet Tom with a smile when he returned. One day, I received a call from my mother after a long time. Hearing her excited story, I was taken aback. $6 million, she said. "Yes, 6 million. You know the mountains and lands we owned? We don't need them anymore. We had them appraised, and they are worth 8 million. We only need 1 million to enjoy the rest of our lives, so I think you might want to rethink your life too." My mother was never fond of Tom. She was worried about me, especially after Tom became more and more controlling, preventing me from even visiting my childhood home. I was stunned by the amount she mentioned. Furthermore, I was shocked to learn that when my mother inherited the property from my grandmother, she changed the title to my name so there were no inheritance taxes. "It's better not to tell Tom," my mother advised before hanging up the phone. I felt conflicted between the urge to immediately inform Tom and the desire to live freely with that money. About a week later, I was involved in a traffic accident. Thankfully, my life wasn't in danger, but I'd need to be hospitalized for about a week. After storing my valuables in the hospital room drawer, I immediately contacted Tom. "I'm sorry I got injured," I said. What about my meals?" I almost cited Tom's reaction, prioritizing his meals over my injury, but I continued to explain. "It seems I'll need to be hospitalized for a week. I'm really sorry, but could you buy your meals elsewhere until then?" "Not even preparing meals for your husband. What a lazy wife. Oh, wait, there, I'm coming over now," Tom said, unilaterally ending the call. I was planning to tell him about the inheritance tonight, but now I thought it might be best not to mention it. Looking at all the tubes attached to me during this precautionary examination, I somehow had a feeling soon enough I'd come to realize that my intuition was right. "You're useless, can't even do housework. Let's get a divorce, and you better pay me compensation, too." As soon as he entered the room, Tom, with a smirk on his face, said this to me, who was connected to several tubes. Beside him stood a girl I didn't recognize. Tom wasn't aware that my total assets amounted to $6 million. He should know that a divorce under these circumstances would be a life and death matter for me, a housewife. "Fine, here's the divorce papers. A man who would hurl abuse at his wife in this condition is someone I'd rather not have." I handed Tom the divorce papers I had kept as a sort of charm. Tom took them with a smug smile on his face. "With this, I can finally say goodbye to you. I'm going to be happy with her, right, Catherine?" Saying this, Tom wrapped his arm around the girl's waist. The girl named Catherine leaned against Tom and scoffed at me. "Take care, madam. Oh, you're not a madam anymore, so take care, old lady." With those words, the two of them left the room laughing. But the joy would be short-lived. Left alone in my room, I burst out laughing. Today is Friday, so the divorce papers would only be processed on Monday. Oh, I cannot wait for 3 days from now. Just as I had expected, the weekend went by without any contact from Tom, and it was quite peaceful. I was restless, not used to doing nothing since getting married. Every time I became restless, the nurses would tell me to stay calm. Then on Monday evening, I received a barrage of calls from Tom. I initially ignored them, but after about 30 minutes of incessant ringing, I decided to answer. "Could you not be so persistent? Hey, what's the meaning of this?" As soon as I picked up, Tom shouted at me. I couldn't help but laugh. Tom seemed infuriated by my laughter and was screaming incoherently. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The divorce papers aren't being accepted, are they?" Thomas fumed on the other side of the phone, huffing and puffing. I continued to chuckle and responded to his complaint. "Oh, I had previously filed a non-acceptance notification. Remember how you used to say, 'Let's get divorced,' every time we had a fight? I thought it wouldn't be good if you filed for divorce on a whim during one of our arguments." "Ugh, but I don't need that now. Withdraw it immediately," Tom said for a moment, but then quickly gave another order. But now that things had come to this, I was no longer just going to listen to everything Tom said. "I can't do that until I'm discharged. We need to go through procedures at the municipal office," I replied. "Then discharge now. Don't be unreasonable. His utterly selfish demands made me laugh even more. He probably wanted to register his marriage with Catherine, whom he brought on Friday." Thomas was clearly panicking. "By the way, was her name Catherine? She's your mistress, right?" "Hey, that's rude to Catherine. Apologize. She's my new wife. We are not divorced yet, so she's technically your mistress, isn't she?" Tom responded. Responding calmly to Tom's nonsensical remarks, Tom made a weird groaning sound. I decided to hit him where it hurt the most. "By the way, you'll hear from my lawyer about the division of property. That's right, property, including the trouble this time. You better share properly." I'm not sure why he misunderstood, but Tom suddenly sounded in her spirits. After all, the responsible party has to pay the compensation. I had always done my household chores diligently, and of course, I had never cheated on him. It's clear as day that Tom is a responsible party. What are you misunderstanding? You're the one who has to give me the assets. What? Tom responded with a voice that genuinely didn't understand. He likely believed that by not taking care of him while I was hospitalized, I would truly be at fault. Even in my parents' age, one wouldn't be deemed at fault for such a reason. As I bitterly thought this, I explained to him patiently, "What fault of mine are you talking about? Just to let you know, not being able to do housework because of my hospitalization doesn't make me the one at fault. You've abandoned taking care of me. If you were a child, it would be considered child neglect, but you're an adult and should be able to take care of yourself. That's why it doesn't make me at fault. If I say you're at fault, then you are at fault." Even a judge would be shocked by his baffling logic. My mental image of myself took a huge face fall. Was he really taking me so lightly to think such childish reasoning would work? Finally get it. Don't you know what's legally defined as grounds for fault? Being at fault would mean, for instance, infidelity like having another woman despite having a wife. That's why Catherine is my new wife, and you're no longer of any use to me, so it doesn't apply, right? What are you talking about? Since you are dating her behind my back, it's clearly cheating. Tom still doesn't seem to understand. He was set on believing that he was right. Either way, please communicate through a lawyer from now on. Goodbye. Hey, Emily. I hung up the phone without listening to Tom's protest. He called multiple times, but when I ignored him, he eventually seemed to give up and fell silent. I was relieved, but the next day, another headache-inducing event occurred. Feeling frustrated by the non-stop ringing from 9 in the morning, I pressed the call button. On the other end, Thomas was complaining at me like a machine gun firing. I wasn't quite sure what he was saying at first, but piecing it together, it seemed he was complaining about not being able to withdraw money from a bank account. If it's a joint account, Tom should be able to withdraw without any issue. But if not... I recalled the bank cards and passbooks I had left at home and asked Tom, "Were you trying to take money from my account by any chance?" "Exactly. You're still in the hospital, and I was going to take the money into account, but the card won't work." Tom raged on with his unreasonable argument. It seems he didn't understand what I said yesterday. When I was scheduled to be hospitalized for a week, I had called the bank and requested they prevent withdrawals until I could personally handle it after being discharged. It was to prevent Tom, who's reckless with money, from depleting my savings in my absence. My decision was proven right. It's unthinkable to try to withdraw money from the account of an ex-wife you've divorced. However, Tom didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with it and asked me to make a withdrawal immediately. "What are you talking about? We are practically strangers now. Why would I do as you say? The fact that you in my life hasn't changed, even if you're getting divorced. Act like a proper wife and listen to me. We are just not legally divorced yet, but we are already strangers. Got it. Unfortunately, I don't have money to give to strangers." Thompson was shocked over the phone since I had never resisted him this much before, but he quickly became assertive again. "Just do as I say. Send the money now. Pay the compensation for not doing housework." Even though he was academically capable when we first met, sadly, he seemed to lack common sense. 17 years into her marriage, it was confirmed that I had made a poor choice in a partner. Tom seemed frustrated that I wasn't giving in. He likely had exhausted his cash on hand and probably dipped into the living expenses. I had left at home and from our shared account. I spoke to Tom as if I was talking to a small child. "Listen, I'm no longer your submissive wife. We'll settle the property division through a lawyer later on." "What? You're so insolent. I'm coming over right now. Just wait." Saying so, Tom hung up the phone. "I don't mind if he comes to the hospital, but I've already asked the nurses' station not to let anyone in except for my parents, so it's unlikely he'll make it to my room." Tom really did come to the hospital, but as expected, he seemed to have been stopped at the nurses' station. My phone kept ringing, but after ignoring it for a while, it switched to messages, and my screen was flooded with notifications. I saved all of them as evidence and contacted my lawyer. After a while, It seemed that the lawyer had gotten in touch with Tom, as the messages stopped coming in. I thought it was the end, but my hopes were about to be dashed. There's a visitor named Karen. Would you like to see her? Karen, please let him. Karen was a friend who shared my hobbies back when I was single. We became close after she responded to my posts on a social media platform where I kept records of my dining experiences. We discovered we lived nearby and often went out to eat together. After getting married, while I couldn't dine out as much due to saving money, we kept in touch by regularly meeting for tea and chats. Emily, are you okay from the injury? Yes, I'm feeling much better now, thank you. As Karen immediately expressed her concern upon entering the room, I felt the warmth in my heart. I realized that since my hospitalization, aside from my parents and hospital staff, no one had shown concern for me. Hey, Emily, things are tough for you right now, aren't they? Huh? Why? I hadn't told anyone about my situation other than my parents. I wondered how Karen knew and asked her, intrigued. Karen then said something shocking. You know Catherine, the young girl, right? She's having an affair with your husband, isn't she? What? How do you know about... Wait, you know her? Actually, she's my niece. I was so surprised by Karen's hesitant answer that I couldn't close my mouth. Who would have thought that Karen was Catherine's aunt? The room went silent. It was the first time there was silence when Karen was around, and it made me feel uneasy. You see, Catherine suddenly told her mother, my sister, that she's getting married. And what's more shocking is that her partner is 45 years old. When I saw the photo, it was your husband. I was so surprised. I've already told my sister, I'm so sorry for all the trouble my niece has caused you, Emily. Don't apologize, Karen. It's not your fault. Karen looked like she was about to cry. I'm thinking of demanding compensation from Catherine. I can't compromise on that. But if I do, does this mean our relationship will end? Of course not. I want to continue being friends with you, Emily. I'll make sure Catherine pays compensation. Neither my sister nor I can forgive what she's done. We'll keep a close eye on her. I was very grateful for Karen's words. We've been friends for over 20 years. I didn't want to lose a precious friend because of my terrible husband and his mistress. I've scheduled a meeting with them tomorrow, and I'd like you to come with me. Of course I'll be there, and I can also provide photos as evidence of their affair. The next day, fresh from being discharged from the hospital, I went to a private restaurant room with my lawyer. Tom and Catherine had already arrived and were indulging in an expensive traditional meal. I was speechless at the audacity. You finally made it. Did you bring the money? Remember, you are paying for this meal. Tom said this to me without even stopping his meal. Catherine beside him continued to eat with a smug on her face. I decided to fight back. Please handle the payment yourselves. Moreover, I came here to demand sharing the assets from the two of you. How long are you going to sulk? You're really unattractive. Ignoring Tom's rude remarks, my lawyer and I took our seats and showed evidence proving Tom's fault. We first presented legal documents regarding the reasons for liability, followed by documents on property division. Lastly, we showed the photos given by Karen, which showed Catherine and Tom, as well as Catherine with an unknown man entering a hotel. Wait, why? Hey, Catherine, what is this? Tom and Catherine were visibly shaken by the photos, and they finally stopped eating. Just then, Karen made her timely entrance. I took those photos. What, Karen? Catherine seemed confused as to why her aunt was present. Karen, with cold eyes, looked down on Catherine and Tom and calmly spoke about being friends with me for 20 years and how their actions were utterly despicable. Also, Catherine, you mentioned that the baby you're carrying is his, but given your actions, who knows who the father is? Wait, no, I was hearing about her pregnancy for the first time, and judging by her appearance today, one could never guess she was pregnant. However, judging by Tom's reaction, it seems she did claim to be pregnant. So you're pregnant. In that case, after a DNA test, I'll demand an additional penalty. No, I'm sorry, I lied about the pregnancy. Please forgive me. Catherine suddenly admitted this and bowed deeply. She had been searching for wealthy old men, and Tom was the wallet she called. He bought her designer goods, and she was promised a life where she wouldn't have to work and could do as she pleased after her marriage. She believed she could be a housewife and occasionally have flings with men of her choice. She had once lied about being pregnant because he showed no signs of wanting to divorce. Tom froze with his mouth agape when he heard this. I'm truly sorry, but I can't give you anything. I don't have the money. I'll pay Emily in advance. You're going to work part-time diligently every month and repay me. You won't have any time for leisure until you've paid me back in full. Oh no. Catherine was ugly, disheartened. Karen mentioned she'd bring Catherine again later for another apology and took her out of the restaurant. Tom was in shock the entire time, but seemed to snap back to reality and approached me in a flattering tone. Look, it seems I was deceived. I can live without Emily, right? We still have the divorce papers here. Can we start over? You've always been a housewife, so you can't possibly work now, can you? I listened to Tom's plea with a cold gaze, none of which moved me. However, I waited for him to finish before answering with a smile. I can live just fine without you. I'll be taking the divorce papers and filing them shortly. Also, I never mentioned this, but my personal net worth is currently around $6 million, so I can live comfortably without working for the rest of my life. Rest assured. $6 million? Why did you keep such a fortune a secret? I was about to tell you when you started making a fuss about divorce. I'll definitely get some of your assets, and this money is my personal inheritance, so it doesn't count towards marital assets. It has nothing to do with you, right? Tom looked at me with a face of utter despair. My lawyer quickly produced some documents and a pen for Tom to sign. The lawyer and I then left and immediately filed for divorce, ending our almost 20-year marriage. Later, Catherine transferred some of her money to my account. According to Karen, upon learning of this incident, Catherine's mother was furious. She made Catherine take a leave from university and work non-stop at her relative's inn until she prepared the compensation. Tom, on the other hand, was disowned by his in-laws after they learned about the divorce. He was told he didn't receive any assistance, so he reluctantly took out a loan and paid me in one lump sum. Furthermore, it was revealed that he had been with Catherine at a hotel during work hours. He was fired from his job and is now juggling multiple construction jobs to repay his debts. As for me, even after receiving such a large sum, I didn't know what to spend it on, so I donated a portion to charity. I then moved to the countryside with the remaining money and am now enjoying a luxurious single life. I've continued my relationship with Karen. On our days off, we go on food tours and short trips. We both plan to stay single, so I suggested maybe we should share a room. Initially hesitant, Karen agreed when I mentioned we could share deliveries and she could join my meals. I am excited as the moving preparations will start next week. I want to live my life joyfully and true to myself from now on.
I smoothed my blouse and took a deep breath before stepping into the conference room. The promotion I'd been working towards for years was finally within reach, but the butterflies in my stomach reminded me of everything I stood to lose. "Francesca, come in," my boss Richard called out. "We've been waiting for you." I plastered on a smile and strode to the empty chair at the head of the table. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." Richard waved off my apology. "No worries. We're just excited to share the news." He beamed at me, and I felt a surge of hope. "Congratulations, Fran. You're our new regional sales director." The room erupted in applause, but I could barely hear it over the pounding of my heart. I'd done it. After years of long hours and missed family dinners, I'd finally reached the top. "Thank you," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm honored and thrilled to take on this new role." As my colleagues offered their congratulations, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on shaking hands and accepting praise. It wasn't until an hour later, when I finally escaped to my office, that I checked the missed calls. 5 from Neil, 3 from the kids' school. My stomach dropped as I dialed Neil's number. He picked up on the first ring. "Where have you been?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." "I was in a meeting," I said, guilt washing over me. "What's wrong? Are the kids okay?" Neil sighed heavily. "Tommy's sick. The school called, but they couldn't reach you, so I had to leave work early to pick him up." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "I'm so sorry, Neil. I should have checked my phone." "Yeah, you should have," he snapped. "This isn't the first time, Fran. I can't keep dropping everything because you're too busy with work." His words stung, but I knew he was right. "I'll make it up to you," I promised. "I'm leaving now. I'll be home in 20 minutes. "Don't bother," Neil said coldly. "I've got it under control. Just come home when you're done with whatever's more important than your family." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in shock. Neil had never spoken to me like that before. We'd had our disagreements, sure, but this felt different, dangerous. I grabbed my purse and rushed out of the office, my promotion celebration forgotten. As I navigated through rush hour traffic, my mind raced. How had things gotten so bad without me noticing? When was the last time Neil and I had a real conversation that didn't revolve around schedules or the kids? By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands were shaking. I took a moment to compose myself before heading inside. The house was quiet when I entered, save for the low murmur of the TV in the living room. I found Neil sprawled on the couch, a beer in hand. "Where are the kids?" I asked, setting down my purse. "Asleep," Neil replied, not looking at me. "Tommy's fever broke an hour ago." I perched on the edge of the armchair, studying my husband's profile. "Neil, I'm sorry. I should have been there." He turned to face me then, his eyes hard. "You're always sorry, Fran, but nothing ever changes." "That's not fair," I protested. "I work hard to provide for this family." Neil laughed bitterly. "And what good is that if you're never here? The kids barely know you anymore." His words hit me like a physical blow. "That's not true," I whispered, but even as I said it, I wondered if he was right. Neil stood up abruptly. "I'm going to bed. We can talk about this in the morning." As he walked away, leaving me alone in the darkened living room, I realized that my perfect day had turned into a nightmare, and something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed and the sound of Neil rummaging in the kitchen. I steeled myself for the conversation ahead and made my way downstairs. "Morning," I said, trying to keep my voice light. Neil grunted in response, not looking up from his coffee. "Neil, we need to talk about last night." He sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "What's there to talk about, Fran? You made your choice?" "My choice?" I felt my temper rising. "I didn't choose between my job and my family. I'm trying to do both." Neil slammed his mug down, coffee sloshing onto the counter. "Well, you're failing at one of them. Do you even know what's going on in your kids' lives anymore?" His words stung, but I refused to back down. "Of course I do. Just because I'm not here every minute doesn't mean I'm not involved." "Oh, really?" Neil's voice dripped with sarcasm. "What's Tommy's favorite subject in school right now? When was Lily's last dance recital?" I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it again. The truth was, I didn't know. Neil nodded, a bitter smile on his face. "That's what I thought." "That's not fair," I protested. "I'm working hard to give them a better life." "They don't need a better life, Fran. They need their mother." We glared at each other across the kitchen island, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "I can't do this anymore," Neil said finally, his voice quieter but no less angry. "I'm tired of being a single parent in a two-parent household." My heart clenched. "What are you saying?" Before he could answer, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Richard. "Don't you dare answer that," Neil warned. I hesitated, torn between my responsibilities at work and the crisis unfolding in my kitchen. "If you take that call, Fran, we're done." "I mean it." With shaking hands, I declined the call. "There. Are you happy now?" Neil laughed humorlessly. "No, Fran, I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time." The front door opened, and our children's voices filled the house. Neil and I quickly composed ourselves as Tommy and Lily burst into the kitchen. "Mom, you're home!" Lily exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. "I am, sweetie. I missed you." As I helped the kids with breakfast, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my marriage. Neil barely spoke, his eyes distant as he mechanically went through the motions of the morning routine. Later that day, I was in my home office when I overheard Neil on the phone in the hallway. "I don't know, Sarah. Things are really tense right now," he was saying, his voice low. "No, I haven't told her about, it's not the right time." My blood ran cold. Who was Sarah, and what hadn't Neil told me? I waited until he hung up before confronting him. "Who's Sarah?" Neil's face paled. She's just a coworker. We've been working on a project together." "And what haven't you told me?" I pressed, my heart pounding. Neil ran a hand through his hair, looking everywhere but at me. "It's nothing, Fran, just work stuff." But I could see the guilt in his eyes, the way he fidgeted with his wedding ring. In that moment, I knew our marriage was in far more trouble than I'd realized. "Neil," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "are you having an affair?" The silence that followed was deafening. Neil opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. But before he could answer, my phone rang once more. This time, it was the kids' school. As I answered the call, my eyes locked with Neil's. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know, and I felt my world crumbling around me. The hotel room felt cold and impersonal as I stared at my laptop, trying to focus on the presentation I'd be giving tomorrow. But my mind kept drifting back home, to Neil and the kids. It had been 3 days since I'd left for this business trip, and the tension from our last argument still lingered in the air. My phone buzzed, and I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety when I saw it was Tommy calling. "Hey, sweetie," I answered, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "How are you?" "Hi, Mom," Tommy said, his voice small and uncertain. "When are you coming home?" My heart clenched. "In 2 days, honey. Is everything okay?" There was a pause, and I could hear Lily's voice in the background. "Yeah, I guess," Tommy finally replied. "It's just, Dad's been acting weird." I sat up straighter, my mom instincts on high alert. "Weird how?" "He's not home much," Lily chimed in, having apparently grabbed the phone from her brother. "And when he is, he's always on his phone or leaving to run errands." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Have you two been alone a lot?" "Mrs. Johnson from next door has been checking on us," Tommy said. "But yeah, kinda." I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of anger and fear. "Okay, listen to me," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I want you both to go to Mrs. Johnson's house right now. Tell her I called and asked her to keep you there until I can reach your father. Can you do that for me?" After getting their agreement and making sure they were safely with our neighbor, I dialed Neil's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Neil," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained fury, "call me back immediately. We need to talk about why our children are home alone while you're out God knows where." I paced the hotel room, my mind racing. Was Neil with Sarah? Had he abandoned our family for her? The thought made me sick. An hour passed with no word from Neil. I called Mrs. Johnson, who confirmed the kids were safe with her. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Neil's office. "Hello, this is Francesca, Neil's wife," I said when his assistant answered. "I'm trying to reach him about an urgent family matter. Is he there?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, but Neil called in sick today," the assistant replied, sounding confused. "He said he had a bad case of the flu." The lie hit me like a physical blow. "I see," I managed to say. "Thank you." I hung up and sank onto the bed, my whole body trembling. Neil wasn't sick. He wasn't working late. He was... What? Running around with Sarah while our children sat at home alone? My phone buzzed again. A text from Neil. "Sorry. Was in a meeting. Kids are fine. Don't worry." The casual dismissal of my concerns pushed me over the edge. I dialed his number again, and this time he picked up. "Neil, where the hell are you?" I demanded without preamble. "Fran, calm down," he said, his voice maddeningly calm. "I told you, everything's fine." "Everything is not fine," I shouted. "Our children are alone. You lied to your work about being sick, and you're off doing God knows what with God knows who." There was a long pause. When Neil spoke again, his voice was cold. "You're one to talk about abandoning our family, Fran. How many nights have you been away this month?" "That's different, and you know it," I hissed. "I'm working, Neil. What's your excuse?" Another pause. Then, "Maybe I needed a break too, Fran. Maybe I'm tired of being the one who's always there while you get to escape." His words hit me like a slap. Is that what this is? Punishment? Or is it just an excuse to be with Sarah? I heard Neil's sharp intake of breath. "How do you know about Sarah?" So it's true, I whispered, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. You're having an affair. Fran, it's not. It's complicated, Neil stammered. But I'd heard enough. I'm coming home, I said, my voice eerily calm. And when I get there, Neil, you'd better be prepared to explain yourself to me and our children. Because this ends now. I hung up and immediately started packing my bags. As I booked the first flight home, I felt a strange mix of rage, heartbreak, and determination. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The conference room erupted in applause as I concluded my presentation. Smiles and nods of approval surrounded me, but the victory felt hollow. My mind was back home with Tommy and Lily, wondering if Neil had kept his word about being there for them. Exceptional work, Francesca, my boss, Richard, beamed. You've exceeded all expectations in your new role. I forced a smile. Thank you, Richard. I'm glad it's been well received. As my colleagues filed out, Richard held me back. Fran, I know this promotion has been challenging, but you're thriving. We're considering you for an even more senior position. My heart raced, but not from excitement. That's wonderful, Richard. Can I have some time to think about it? He looked surprised but nodded. Of course. Take the weekend. We'll discuss it on Monday. Back in my hotel room, I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over Neil's number. We hadn't spoken since our heated exchange 3 days ago. Taking a deep breath, I dialed. Fran, Neil's voice was guarded. Is everything okay? I don't know, I admitted. How are the kids? They're fine. We had pizza night yesterday. Lily got an A on her science project. The casual normalcy of his words stung. I'd missed so much. Neil, we need to talk. About us, about Sarah, about everything. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Neil sighed. I know, but not over the phone. When are you coming home? Tomorrow, I said. I'm cutting the trip short. Fran, you can't keep doing that. Your job. My job isn't more important than our family, I interrupted, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. Another pause. Okay, Neil said softly. We'll talk tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat on the bed, overwhelmed by the weight of everything. My career was soaring, but at what cost? I thought of all the moments I'd missed. Lily's dance recitals, Tommy's baseball games, family dinners that had become increasingly rare. A knock at the door startled me. It was Jenna, a colleague I'd grown close to over the past few months. Hey, superstar, she grinned. We're all heading out for drinks to celebrate. You coming? I hesitated, torn between professional obligations and personal needs. I can't, Jenna. I need to pack. I'm heading home early. Jenna's smile faded. Fran, is everything okay? You've seemed distracted all week. Before I could stop myself, everything came pouring out. The fights with Neil, my suspicions about Sarah, the guilt over neglecting my children. Jenna listened, her face a mix of sympathy and concern. Oh, Fran, she said when I finished. I had no idea, but listen, you can't blame yourself for everything. You're an amazing mom and a brilliant professional. It's not your fault if Neil can't handle your success. Her words, meant to comfort, hit me like a punch to the gut. Was that really how I came across? So focused on my career that I'd neglected everything else? Thanks, Jenna, I managed. But I think I've lost sight of what's truly important. After Jenna left, I sat at the desk and pulled out a notepad. On one side, I wrote career. On the other, family. As I began listing pros and cons, tears blurred my vision. My phone buzzed, a text from Tommy. Miss you, Mom. Can't wait till you're home. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and dialed Richard's number. Richard, it's Francesca. I've made a decision about that senior position. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I was certain I was making the right choice. Whatever happened with Neil, whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew where my priorities needed to be. Tomorrow, I'd go home and face the music. But tonight, I'd sleep easier knowing I was finally putting my family first. The taxi pulled up to our house, and I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. I'd spent the entire flight rehearsing what I'd say to Neil, how we'd work through this rough patch. But as I approached the front door, an eerie silence enveloped me. Neil? Tommy? Lily? I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. No response. Panic rising, I rushed from room to room, finding nothing but unmade beds and half-empty closets. In the kitchen, a yellow sticky note on the fridge caught my eye. Neil's hasty scrawl read, Kids are at Mrs. Johnson's. We need to talk. I'll call you. My hands shook as I dialed Mrs. Johnson's number. Francesca, dear, she answered. The children are fine. Neil dropped them off yesterday, said there was a family emergency. Yesterday, I choked out. How long were you supposed to keep them? A pause. Well, Neil wasn't specific. Is everything all right? I mumbled some excuse and hung up, my mind reeling. Neil had left our children with a neighbor indefinitely? What kind of family emergency could possibly justify this? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Neil. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it anymore. I'm with Sarah. We'll figure out arrangements for the kids later. The world tilted on its axis. I stumbled to the couch, reading and rereading the message, unable to process the casual cruelty of his words. A knock at the door jolted me back to reality. It was Tommy and Lily, faces bright with excitement at seeing me home early. Mom, Lily cried, throwing herself into my arms. We missed you so much. Tommy, ever the observant one, furrowed his brow. Where's Dad? Mrs. Johnson said he had to go away for a while. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Your father, he had to take care of something. Squawk, but don't worry, I'm here now. As I helped them unpack, my mind raced. How could I tell them their father had abandoned us? How could I protect them from the pain I was feeling? That night, after tucking the kids in, I sat at the kitchen table staring at Neil's note. Anger, betrayal, and fear warred within me. I thought about calling him, demanding explanations, but what good would that do? Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Divorce lawyers, child custody laws, financial advisors. With each click, my resolve strengthened. Neil might have walked out on us, but I wouldn't let him destroy our family. As dawn broke, I had a plan. I'd fight for full custody, ensure financial stability for the kids, and rebuild our lives, with or without Neil. My phone buzzed again. Neil, can we talk? I want to explain. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to lash out, to hurt him as deeply as he'd hurt me, but a cooler, more determined part knew that engaging now would only complicate things. Instead, I typed, all communication goes through my lawyer from now on. Expect to hear from them soon. As I hit send, I felt a strange mix of sadness and empowerment. The life I'd known was over, shattered by Neil's betrayal, but from the ashes, a stronger, more resilient Francesca was emerging. I heard stirring upstairs. The kids would be awake soon. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Neil might have given up on our family, but I never would. As I started preparing breakfast, my mind clear and focused for the first time in months, I made a silent vow, to my children, to myself, and to the future we'd build together. We would not just survive this, we would thrive. The coffee maker beeped, and I poured myself a cup, feeling the warmth seep into my hands. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky in hues of hope. It was a new day, the first day of our new life, and I was ready for it. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet morning. Neil's name flashed on the screen, and my heart raced. It had been a week since he'd left, a week of sleepless nights and tear-filled days. With trembling fingers, I answered. Fran. Neil's voice was unnervingly calm. We need to talk about the kids. I gripped the phone tighter. Now you want to talk? After abandoning them without a word? I didn't abandon them, he snapped. I left them with Mrs. Johnson. I knew you'd be home soon. That's not the point, Neil. My voice rose, and I glanced nervously at the stairs, hoping the kids wouldn't wake. You left our children with a neighbor indefinitely. Do you have any idea what that's done to them, to me? A heavy sigh crackled through the line. I'm sorry, Fran. I didn't mean for things to happen this way, but Sarah and I... Don't. I cut him off, bile rising in my throat. Don't you dare talk about her to me. She's part of my life now, Fran. You're going to have to accept that. The casual way he said it, as if he were discussing a new job or a haircut, made something snap inside me. Accept it? You want me to accept that you've thrown away our family for some fling? It's not a fling. Neil's voice hardened. I love her, Fran. I've never felt this way before. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled to the kitchen counter, gripping it for support. What about our children, Neil? What about the vows we made? The kids will adjust, he said, maddeningly reasonable. And vows, sometimes people change, Fran. You changed when you got that promotion. You were never home, always working. What did you expect? Hot tears spilled down my cheeks. So this is my fault? Because I dared to have a career? No, it's not. Look, I didn't call to argue. I want to see the kids this weekend. I'll pick them up Friday after school. Absolutely not, I hissed. You don't get to waltz in and out of their lives like nothing happened. They're my children too, Fran. You can't keep them from me. Watch me, I spat, then hung up. My hands shook as I set the phone down. The unfairness of it all threatened to overwhelm me. Neil had betrayed us, left us, and now he wanted to play happy families on the weekends? I heard movement upstairs. The kids were awake. Wiping my eyes, I tried to compose myself, but as I reached for the cereal bowls, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The room spun, and I found myself on the kitchen floor, gasping for air. Mom? Tommy's worried voice came from the doorway. Mom, are you okay? I looked up to see both my children staring at me, fear etched on their young faces. In that moment, I realized I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't be both mother and father, couldn't shield them from the pain while dealing with my own. I'm okay, sweetie, I managed, pulling myself up. Just a little tired. But as I hugged them close, I knew I was far from okay. The weight of everything, Neil's betrayal, the impending custody battle, the uncertain future, crashed down on me. I needed help. I needed support. Most of all, I needed to be strong for Tommy and Lily. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone again. This time, I dialed my parents' number. Mom? My voice cracked. I need you. Can you come? As I explained the situation through tears, I felt a tiny spark of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. And Neil would learn that he couldn't just walk away from his responsibilities without consequences. The kids clung to me, their small arms a reminder of what I was fighting for. Whatever came next, I would face it head on, for them, for our family, for the life we deserved. The doorbell rang, and I steeled myself for what was to come. Opening the door, I found Neil's parents, Martha and George, their faces etched with concern and confusion. Francesca, dear, Martha began, her voice trembling. What's going on? Neil's not answering our calls, and when we stopped by your house, the neighbors said... I ushered them inside, my heart heavy. You'd better sit down, I said, leading them to the living room where my own parents were already waiting. As I recounted Neil's betrayal and abandonment, Martha's face crumpled, while George's reddened with anger. My mother reached out, squeezing my hand in silent support. I can't believe it, George muttered, shaking his head. Our son, how could he do this to you? To the children? Martha dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We raised him better than this, Francesca. I'm so sorry. Their genuine shock and remorse hit me harder than I expected. I'd been bracing for denial, for them to take Neil's side. Instead, their support washed over me like a balm. We'll talk to him, George said firmly. Make him see reason. I shook my head. I appreciate that, but I don't think it'll help. Neil's made his choice. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Neil. I'm coming to get the kids. Be there in 10. Panic surged through me. He's on his way, I choked out. He wants to take the children. My father stood up, his face set. He's not taking those kids anywhere. The next 10 minutes were a blur of activity. My parents ushered Tommy and Lily upstairs, while Neil's parents positioned themselves near the front door, ready to intercept their son. When Neil's car pulled up, I felt like I might be sick. But as he approached the house, a strange calm settled over me. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for. Neil's face registered shock when he saw his parents. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? We could ask you the same thing, son. George's voice was cold. What do you think you're doing? Neil's eyes darted to me. I'm here to see my children. Fran can't keep them from me. You left them, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You abandoned our family for another woman. You don't get to waltz back in like nothing happened. I didn't abandon them, Neil shouted. I left them with a neighbor. I knew you'd be back soon. Martha stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. Neil, how could you? Those children need their father. They'll still have me, Neil insisted. Sarah and I, we can provide a loving home. Sarah? George's voice thundered. You're throwing away your family for some homewrecker? Neil's face hardened. Don't talk about her like that. She understands me in a way Fran never did. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. Understanding doesn't excuse betrayal, Neil. You made vows. You have responsibilities. Vows? Neil laughed bitterly. What about your vows, Fran? You were never here, always working, always putting your career first. That's not fair, my mother interjected. Francesca has been an amazing mother and wife. Neil's eyes flashed. Stay out of this, it's between me and Fran. No, I said firmly, it's not just between us anymore. You involved our children the moment you walked out that door. I could see Neil's resolve wavering as he looked from face to face, realizing he was outnumbered. But then his expression hardened again. Fine, he spat. Have it your way. But this isn't over, Fran. I'll see you in court. As Neil stormed back to his car, I felt my knees buckle. My parents rushed to support me, while Martha and George looked on, their faces a mix of shame and sorrow. I'm so sorry, Martha whispered. We'll do whatever we can to help. George nodded firmly. We're here for you and the kids, Francesca. Whatever you need. As the reality of what just happened sank in, I realized this was just the beginning. The real battle, for custody, for financial support, for our children's future, was still to come. But looking at the supportive faces around me, I knew I wasn't in this fight alone. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders. Thank you, I said. I'm going to need all the help I can get. 6 months had passed since Neil walked out, and our lives had settled into a new rhythm. My parents had moved into a nearby apartment, becoming a constant source of support and love for the kids. Neil's parents, true to their word, had been equally supportive, often stepping in to help with childcare and emotional support. As I sat in the courtroom, waiting for our final custody hearing to begin, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and determination. Neil sat across the aisle, looking uncomfortable in his suit. Sarah, his new friend, was noticeably absent. Our lawyer, a formidable woman named Diane, leaned over. Remember, Francesca, stay calm. We have a strong case. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the judge as she entered the courtroom. This was it, the moment that would define our future. As the proceedings began, I listened with growing disbelief as Neil's lawyer painted a picture of me as a career-obsessed mother who had neglected her family. They brought up my long hours, my business trips, even my recent promotion. When it was our turn, Diane stood, her voice clear and confident. Your Honor, my client has been nothing but a devoted mother. Her career success doesn't diminish her parenting, it enhances it. She provides stability, financial security, and a strong role model for her children. She then presented evidence of Neil's abandonment, his sporadic visits, and his failure to provide consistent child support. As she spoke, I saw Neil's face grow increasingly pale. The judge listened intently, her expression unreadable. When both sides had presented their cases, she called a brief recess to consider her decision. Those 15 minutes felt like an eternity. I closed my eyes, thinking of Tommy and Lily, of all we'd been through. Whatever happened, I knew I'd never stop fighting for them. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. After careful consideration, she began, I've reached a decision. Primary custody will be awarded to Francesca Carter, with Neil Carter granted visitation rights every other weekend and shared holidays. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I barely heard the rest of the judge's words as she outlined the child support arrangements and other details. As we left the courtroom, Neil approached me, his face a mix of emotions. Fran, I'm sorry for everything. I looked at him, this man I'd once loved, now a stranger. I'm not the one you need to apologize to, Neil. It's our children who've suffered the most. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful for the first time. I know, I want to make things right with them. Can we work something out? Beyond what the court ordered? I considered his words carefully. For the kids' sake, I'm willing to try. But you need to prove yourself, Neil. They need consistency, not just promises. As Neil walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in months, I felt hope for our future. Outside the courthouse, my parents and Neil's were waiting. Their faces lit up when they saw my expression. We won, I said simply, and was engulfed in a group hug. As we drove home, my mother squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You've shown such strength through all of this. I smiled, thinking of the journey we'd been on. I couldn't have done it without all of you. Walking into our house, my house now, I was greeted by the excited shouts of Tommy and Lily. As I hugged them close, I realized that this was the true victory. Not the court decision, but the love and resilience of our little family. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, Lily looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I kissed her forehead, my heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be wonderful." As I closed their bedroom door, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we'd face it together. Neil's betrayal had shaken our world, but it hadn't broken us. Instead, it had revealed a strength I never knew I had. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, surrounded by the love of my family, I knew we could handle anything life threw our way. We weren't just survivors, we were thrivers, and our story was far from over. I slammed the car door shut, my heels clicking against the pavement as I marched toward our suburban home. The setting sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn, but the beauty was lost on me. My mind raced, replaying the conversation I'd overheard at work. "Did you hear about Anthony?" whispered Jessica from accounting. "Apparently, he's been seen around town with some young blonde." I'd brushed it off then, but doubt gnawed at me now. Anthony and I had always been different. Me, the career-driven powerhouse. Him, the supportive homebody. It worked for us, or so I thought. As I reached for my keys, the front door swung open. There stood Anthony, his salt and pepper hair tousled, wearing that goofy kiss-the-cook apron I'd bought him years ago. "Kate, you're home early," he said, surprise evident in his voice. I was just about to start dinner. I pushed past him, tossing my briefcase onto the entryway table. "We need to talk, Anthony." He followed me into the kitchen, concern etching his features. "What's wrong, honey? Rough day at work?" I spun to face him, my eyes narrowing. "Where were you last Tuesday evening?" Anthony's brow furrowed. "Tuesday, I was at the gym, I think." "Why?" "The gym," I repeated, my voice flat. "Funny, because Jessica from accounting saw you at Rosario's, with a blonde." His face paled, and for a moment I saw guilt flash in his eyes before he composed himself. "Kate, it's not what you think. That was Beth from my book club. We grabbed a quick bite after the meeting ran late." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to, but something didn't sit right. "Book club? Since when are you in a book club?" Anthony sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I joined a few months ago. I thought it might give us something to talk about besides your work." The words stung, but I pushed the hurt aside. "And you didn't think to mention this?" "Honestly, I didn't think you'd care," he said softly. We stood there, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I was about to press further when my phone buzzed, a text from my boss. "Big news. Call me ASAP." I glanced at Anthony, torn between my suspicions and my career. "This isn't over," I said, grabbing my phone and heading to the study. 10 minutes later, I emerged, my head spinning. A promotion. A big one. But it came with a catch, a 2-year assignment in Chicago. I found Anthony in the living room, pretending to read a book. "That was work," I said, perching on the arm of the sofa. "They've offered me a promotion." His eyes lit up. "Kate, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." For a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with, supportive, kind, always in my corner. But then I remembered the blonde, the lies, and my heart hardened. "It's in Chicago," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "For 2 years. Anthony's smile faltered. "Oh, I see." "I haven't accepted yet," I added quickly. "I wanted to discuss it with you first." He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the carpet. "It's a great opportunity, Kate. You should take it." His easy acquiescence surprised me. Shouldn't he fight for us? Ask me to stay? Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Anthony jumped up. "I'll get it," he said, relief evident in his voice. I heard muffled voices at the door, then Anthony called out, "Kate, there's someone here to see you." Curious, I made my way to the entryway. There, holding a thick manila envelope, stood a man in a crisp suit. "Catherine Lawson?" he asked. I nodded, a sense of dread washing over me. "This is for you," he said, handing me the envelope. "You've been served." As the man turned and left, I stared at the envelope in my hands, my world tilting on its axis. What fresh hell was this? I looked up at Anthony, his face a mask of confusion and concern. In that moment, I knew our comfortable life was about to be shattered. The only question was, how many pieces would be left when the dust settled? I stared at the pregnancy test, the 2 pink lines mocking me. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was falling apart. The manila envelope from last night lay unopened on the bathroom counter. I didn't need to look inside to know what it contained. Divorce papers. Anthony's ultimate betrayal. A knock on the door startled me. "Kate, are you okay in there?" Anthony's voice, laced with concern, made my stomach churn. I shoved the test into my pocket and opened the door. "I'm fine," I lied, brushing past him. He caught my arm gently. "Kate, we need to talk about last night, about the papers." I yanked my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about. You want a divorce? Fine, but don't expect me to make it easy for you." Anthony's face crumpled. "It's not what you think. I didn't file for divorce. Those papers, they're from my mother." I froze, confusion replacing anger. "Your mother? What are you talking about?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Remember that letter you found last month? The one hinting at some family secret?" I nodded, recalling the cryptic message that had set my suspicions in motion. "Well, those papers explain everything. My mother, she's not who I thought she was, and neither am I." Before he could elaborate, my phone rang. It was my boss again. "I have to take this," I said, grateful for the interruption. 10 minutes later, I emerged from the study, my mind reeling. The promotion was official, but the timeline had been moved up. They wanted me in Chicago by the end of the week. I found Anthony in the kitchen, the envelope's contents spread across the table. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. "They want me in Chicago by Friday," I blurted out. He looked up, startled. "What? But that's so soon." "I know, but this opportunity, Anthony, it could change everything for us." He laughed bitterly. "Us? Kate, did you even look at these papers? My whole life is a lie. I don't even know who I am anymore." I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. "We can figure this out, together. Maybe this move is exactly what we need, a fresh start." Anthony shook his head. "You don't get it, do you? Your career has always come first, even now, when our marriage is falling apart, when my world is crumbling. All you can think about is your next big move." His words stung, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. "That's not fair. I've worked hard to get where I am. And I've worked hard to support you," he shot back. "But at what cost? We're strangers, Kate, living separate lives under the same roof." I opened my mouth to argue, but nausea hit me like a wave. I bolted for the bathroom, barely making it in time. As I retched into the toilet, I felt Anthony's presence behind me. "Kate, are you sick?" I wiped my mouth, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine. Must be something I ate." But as I stood, the pregnancy test fell from my pocket. Anthony's eyes widened as he saw it. Are you?" I nodded, tears welling up. "I just found out this morning." For a moment, joy flickered across his face. Then reality set in. "The job in Chicago, what are you going to do?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications. I placed a hand on my stomach, torn between my career ambitions and the new life growing inside me. "I don't know," I whispered. "I honestly don't know." Anthony reached out, his hand hovering uncertainly. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you, for both of you." His words should have comforted me. Instead, they filled me with dread. How could I trust him after everything? And how could I possibly choose between my dream job and this unexpected pregnancy? As we stood there, the bathroom suddenly feeling claustrophobic, I realized our comfortable life wasn't just shattered. It was obliterated, and the pieces left behind were sharper and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The Chicago skyline loomed before me as I stepped out of the taxi, my hand instinctively resting on my still flat stomach. 1 month into my new job, and I was already feeling the weight of my decision. "Miss Lawson?" A crisp voice cut through my thoughts. "I'm Amanda, your new assistant. Mr. Donovan is waiting for you in the conference room." I nodded, straightening my blazer. "Thank you, Amanda. Let's not keep him waiting." As we walked through the sleek office, I could feel eyes on me. Whispers followed in my wake. I'd heard the rumors, the ruthless corporate climber who'd left her husband behind for a promotion. If only they knew the whole story. Mr. Donovan, my new boss, greeted me with a shark-like smile. "Kate, just the woman I wanted to see. We've got a situation with the Hendricks account." I spent the next hour in a heated debate, defending our strategy. By the time I left the conference room, my head was pounding and my stomach was churning. "Are you all right, Miss Lawson?" Amanda asked, concern etching her features. I waved her off. "Just a bit of nausea. It'll pass." Back in my office, I collapsed into my chair, exhaustion washing over me. My phone buzzed, a message from Anthony. "Hope you're settling in well. We need to talk about the papers from my mother. Call me when you can." I sighed, guilt and frustration warring within me. I hadn't told him I was keeping the baby. I hadn't told anyone. A knock at my door startled me. "Come in," I called, quickly composing myself. A tall, handsome man entered, his smile warm but his eyes calculating. "Kate Lawson? I'm Jason Hendricks. I believe we have some business to discuss." My eyes widened. This was the CEO of Hendricks Corp., the account I'd just been arguing about. "Mr. Hendricks, what a surprise. Please have a seat." As we talked, I found myself drawn to Jason's charisma and quick wit. For the first time since arriving in Chicago, I felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with work. Our meeting ran late into the evening. As we wrapped up, Jason leaned in, his voice low. "You know, Kate, I have a feeling we could work well together. How about dinner tomorrow night? To discuss the account, of course." I hesitated, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Mr. Hendricks." His eyes followed my movement, understanding dawning on his face. "Ah, I see. Congratulations are in order, then?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "How did you?" Jason smiled kindly. "I have 3 kids of my own. I recognize the signs. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me." As he left, I slumped in my chair, my mind reeling. How long could I keep this pregnancy hidden? And what would it mean for my career? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Anthony. "Kate, please call me. It's important." With shaking hands, I dialed his number. His voice, when he answered, was tense. "Kate, thank God, I've been trying to reach you all day." "What's wrong, Anthony?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He took a deep breath. "It's about the papers from my mother. I'm not who I thought I was. My father, he's not my biological father." I gasped, the implications hitting me like a freight train. "What are you saying, Anthony?" "I'm saying," he replied, his voice breaking, "that the man I thought was my father, he's actually my uncle, and the woman I've known as my aunt, she's my biological mother." The room spun around me as the weight of his words sank in. Just when I thought our lives couldn't get more complicated, this bombshell dropped. "There's more," Anthony continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Kate, I think I might have a half-sister, and I think she might be in Chicago." As the words left his mouth, a knock at my office door made me jump. I looked up to see Amanda, her face pale. "Ms. Lawson, there's someone here to see you. She says she's Anthony's sister." I stared at the woman sitting across from me, searching for any resemblance to Anthony. She introduced herself as Melissa, and the family resemblance was undeniable. The same warm brown eyes, the dimple in her left cheek when she smiled nervously. "I'm sorry to barge in like this," Melissa said, fidgeting with her purse strap. I only found out about Anthony a few weeks ago. When I learned his wife was working here in Chicago, I couldn't resist the chance to meet you." My head spun. "How did you find me?" She looked sheepish. "I may have done some light stalking on social media. I hope you don't mind." I forced a smile, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. It's a lot to take in." Melissa nodded, her eyes following my movement. Her gaze lingered on my midsection, and I saw a flicker of understanding cross her face. Before she could comment, my phone buzzed insistently. "Excuse me," I said, glancing at the screen. It was Jason Hendricks. "Again, I need to take this." Stepping out of my office, I answered the call. "Mr. Hendricks, what can I do for you?" "Kate, I need you at the gala tonight." Jason's voice was urgent. "The board members will all be there, and I want to introduce you as the brains behind our new strategy." I hesitated, glancing back at my office where Melissa waited. "I'm not sure I can make it on such short notice." "Kate," Jason's tone softened, "this could make or break your career here. I need you by my side tonight." The weight of his words settled on me. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for, the chance to solidify my position in the company. But as I ended the call, agreeing to attend, guilt gnawed at me. Returning to my office, I found Melissa examining a photo on my desk. Anthony and me on our wedding day. "He looks so happy," she murmured, then turned to me with a sad smile. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't pry. This must be overwhelming for you." I nodded, sinking into my chair. "It's been a challenging few months." Melissa leaned forward, her eyes kind. "Kate, I hope my presence doesn't complicate things further. I wanted to know my brother and his family." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Family. The baby I was carrying, Anthony's child, would be her niece or nephew. A secret I was still keeping from everyone, including Anthony. I appreciate that, Melissa, I said, my voice strained. But I'm afraid I have a work engagement tonight. Perhaps we could continue this conversation another time? As I ushered her out, promising to be in touch, my phone buzzed again. A text from Anthony. Haven't heard from you. Everything okay? Miss you. I stared at the message, guilt and longing warring within me. When was the last time we'd really talked? The distance between us seemed to grow with each passing day. Hours later, I stood before the mirror in my hotel room, smoothing down my gown. The fabric clung to my body, and I realized with a start that a small bump was beginning to show. Panic rose in my throat. How long could I keep this secret? As I entered the gala, Jason immediately appeared at my side, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me towards a group of stern-looking men in expensive suits. Gentlemen, Jason announced, his voice proud, I'd like you to meet Kate Lawson, the woman who's going to revolutionize our approach to the Hendricks account. I plastered on my most confident smile, pushing thoughts of Anthony, Melissa, and the baby to the back of my mind. This was my moment, the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. But as I shook hands and made small talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away. Something far more precious than any career advancement. My phone vibrated in my clutch. Another message from Anthony. Kate, we really need to talk. It's important. Please call me. In that moment, surrounded by the glittering elite of Chicago's business world, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. The path I chose tonight would change everything. My career, my marriage, my future. The question was, which path would I take? The taxi pulled up to our house, and I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. After weeks of dodging Anthony's calls and ignoring my doctor's warnings about stress, I was finally home, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I paid the driver and dragged my suitcase up the familiar path. The garden Anthony had lovingly tended was overgrown, weeds choking out the flowers we'd planted together. A bad omen if I ever saw one. My key turned in the lock, and I stepped into the silent house. Anthony, I called out, my voice echoing in the emptiness. No response. I made my way upstairs, my hand unconsciously resting on my now visible baby bump. The bedroom door was ajar, and I pushed it open, freezing at the sight before me. The room was a mess, clothes strewn about, drawers left open. And there, on Anthony's nightstand, was a framed photo I'd never seen before. A blonde woman, laughing as she embraced my husband. My legs gave out, and I sank onto the bed, clutching the photo. This couldn't be happening, not after everything we'd been through. The sound of a car pulling up jolted me back to reality. Voices drifted up from outside Anthony's, and a woman's laughter I didn't recognize. I crept to the window, peering out from behind the curtain. There he was, helping a stunning blonde out of his car. They were laden with grocery bags, laughing and talking like a couple. My world tilted on its axis. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. The crash echoed through the house. Hello? Anthony's voice called from downstairs. Is someone there? Footsteps on the stairs. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The bedroom door swung open, and there he stood. Anthony's eyes widened in shock. Kate, what are you doing here? Before I could answer, the blonde appeared behind him. Anthony, who is it? Oh. She stopped short, her eyes darting between us. Bethany, Anthony said, his voice strained. This is Kate, my wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Bethany's face drained of color. Wife? You're married? I found my voice, cold and sharp as ice. Yes, he is, though apparently that means little to him these days. Anthony stepped forward, his hands raised placatingly. Kate, it's not what you think. I can explain. Explain? I spat, fury rising in me. Explain how you're living with another woman while I've been working my ass off in Chicago? Explain how you've been ignoring my calls, making me worry sick? Bethany backed away, her eyes wide with horror. I had no idea. He told me he was divorced. I'm so sorry. Get out, I hissed, my gaze never leaving Anthony's face. Both of you. Get out of my house. Anthony's face crumpled. Kate, please, let me explain. There's so much you don't know. Like what? I shouted, tears streaming down my face. Like how you've been lying to me? To her? What else don't I know, Anthony? In my rage, I forgot myself. My hand, which had been protectively covering my stomach, fell away. Anthony's eyes dropped to my midsection, and I saw the exact moment realization dawned on him. Kate, he whispered, all color draining from his face. Are you pregnant? The room spun around me. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. This wasn't how he was supposed to find out. Bethany gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she murmured, backing out of the room. I stood there, trembling, as the full weight of the situation crashed down on me. My marriage was in shambles, my husband was a liar, and I was carrying a child into this mess. Anthony took a step towards me, his hand outstretched. "Kate, don't," I said, my voice break. "Just don't." I pushed past him, nearly running down the stairs and out of the house. The fresh air hit me like a slap, and I gulped it down, trying to clear my head. As I stood on the lawn, my world crumbling around me, I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay and fight for a marriage that might already be beyond saving, or I could walk away and forge a new path for myself and my unborn child. The decision loomed before me, as daunting as it was inevitable. Whatever I chose, there would be no going back. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anthony paced behind me, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. "Kate, please," he pleaded. "Just let me explain." I whirled around, anger bubbling up inside me. "Explain what, Anthony? How you've been living with another woman while I've been busting my ass in Chicago? How you've been lying to me for months?" He flinched at my words. "It's not like that. Bethany, she's just a friend. She needed a place to stay, and—" "A friend?" I scoffed. "Is that why you were holding her in that photo? Why you've been ignoring my calls?" Anthony's face crumpled. "I was lonely, Kate. You were gone, and I felt lost." His words hit me like a physical blow. "And I wasn't. You think it was easy for me, being away from you, dealing with this pregnancy alone?" Silence fell between us, heavy and oppressive. Anthony's eyes were fixed on my swollen belly, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. I laughed bitterly. "When, Anthony? Between your ignored calls and vague text messages? Or maybe I should have mentioned it while you were busy playing house with Bethany." He stepped towards me, his hand outstretched. "Kate, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I felt like I was losing you to your career." I backed away, my heart pounding. "So you decided to replace me?" "No," he exclaimed. "It wasn't like that. I was confused and Bethany was there and—" "Stop," I cut him off. "I don't want to hear it. You made your choice, Anthony." Just then my phone buzzed. It was Jason Hendricks. I answered, desperate for a distraction. "Kate," Jason's voice was urgent. "Where are you? The board meeting starts in an hour and we need you here." I closed my eyes, torn between my crumbling personal life and my career. I'm not sure I can make it, Jason." "Kate," he said, his voice softening. "I know things are complicated right now, but this meeting could make or break our entire strategy. I need you." I looked at Anthony, who was watching me intently. In that moment, I made my decision. "I'll be there," I told Jason, ending the call. Anthony's face fell. "You're leaving? Now?" I moved past him, grabbing my purse. "What did you expect, Anthony? That I'd just forgive and forget? That we'd play happy families after what you've done?" He grabbed my arm, his eyes pleading. "Kate, please, don't go. We need to talk about this, about the baby." I yanked my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." As I reached for the door, it swung open. Bethany stood there, her eyes red-rimmed. "Kate," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Anthony told me you were divorced, that—" "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear it from either of you." I pushed past her, my heart racing. As I climbed into my car, I could see Anthony and Bethany in the doorway, both looking lost and confused. Tears blurred my vision as I drove, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? How could I trust Anthony again, after this betrayal? As I pulled into the office parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa, Anthony's newly discovered half-sister. "Kate, we need to talk. It's about Anthony and Bethany. There's something you need to know." My hand shook as I read the message. What more could there possibly be? How many more secrets and lies could I uncover? I sat in my car, one hand on my belly, the other clutching my phone. In a matter of hours, my entire world had been turned upside down. My marriage was in shambles, my career hanging by a thread, and now this cryptic message from Melissa. As I stared at the office building looming before me, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Whatever decision I made next would change the course of my life forever. The question was, Did I have the strength to face what lay ahead? I sat across from Melissa in a quiet cafe, my hands wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. The aroma did little to calm my churning stomach. "Kate, I'm so sorry about everything," Melissa began, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "I had no idea things would unravel like this when I reached out to you." I nodded, too exhausted to speak. The past few days had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. Melissa leaned forward, her voice low. "There's something you need to know about Bethany. She's not just some random woman Anthony met. She's the daughter of Robert Hendricks." The name hit me like a thunderbolt. Robert Hendricks, Anthony's boss and the CEO of the company he worked for. The same company that was now my biggest client in Chicago. "What?" I whispered, my mind reeling. How do you know this?" Melissa sighed. "I did some digging after I met you. I wanted to understand my newfound family better. It turns out Bethany has been working for her father's company, trying to prove herself. She was assigned to work closely with Anthony on a project." The pieces started falling into place. The late-night calls Anthony claimed were work-related, the sudden business trips, the growing distance between us. It all made sense now. "Does Anthony know?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Melissa shook her head. "I don't think so. From what I've gathered, Bethany kept her connection to Robert Hendricks a secret. She wanted to succeed on her own merits." I laughed bitterly, and instead she ended up in bed with a married man. As the weight of this new information settled on me, my phone buzzed. It was Jason Hendricks, Robert's son and my direct contact at the company. "Kate, we need you in the office. Now. There's been a development with the merger, and we need your expertise." I ended the call, my mind racing. I had a choice to make: confront Anthony and Bethany with this new information, or focus on my career and the crucial merger that hung in the balance. Melissa reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Kate, what are you going to do?" I stood up, a plan forming in my mind. "I'm going to take control of this situation. All of it." An hour later, I walked into the Hendricks Corporation building, my head held high. As I entered the conference room, I saw Jason, Robert, and to my surprise, Bethany and Anthony. The tension in the room was palpable. Anthony's eyes widened when he saw me, a mix of guilt, confusion on his face. Bethany looked pale, her gaze darting between me and her father. Robert Hendricks stood, his face a mask of professional calm. "Ah, Kate, thank you for joining us. We were just discussing the merger and some personal matters that have come to light." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm aware of the situation, Mr. Hendricks, and I believe I have a solution that will benefit everyone involved." All eyes were on me as I laid out my proposal, a restructuring of the merger that would not only save both companies millions, but also ensure a clear separation between personal and professional relationships. As I spoke, I could see the admiration in Jason's eyes, the grudging respect in Robert's, and the dawning realization in Anthony and Bethany's. When I finished, silence filled the room. Robert was the first to speak. "Impressive, Mrs. Lawson, very impressive indeed. I believe we have a way forward." As the meeting adjourned, Anthony tried to approach me. "Kate, I held up a hand, stopping him. "Not now, Anthony. We'll talk later." I walked out of the conference room, my head spinning. I had just saved my career and exposed the truth about Anthony and Bethany's relationship. But at what cost? As I stood in the elevator, one hand resting on my growing belly, I realized that this was just the beginning. The real battle, for my marriage, my family, and my future, was yet to come. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was Kate Lawson, and I was done being a victim of circumstance. It was time to write my own story. I stood outside Anthony's office, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blazer over my now prominent baby bump, and pushed the door open. Anthony looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Kate, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Bethany walked in, her eyes widening as she saw me. "Oh, I didn't realize you had a meeting," I smiled, a calm settling over me. "I don't, but we all need to talk." Anthony stood, his face pale. "Kate, please, not here, not now." "Now is exactly the right time," I said, my voice steady. "Bethany, there's something you need to know, about Anthony, about me, and about your father." Bethany's brow furrowed. My father? What does he have to do with this? I took a step forward. Everything. You see, Bethany, Anthony isn't just your coworker, he's my husband. The color drained from Bethany's face. She turned to Anthony, her voice barely a whisper. Is this true? Anthony nodded, unable to meet her eyes. I'm so sorry, Bethany. I never meant for things to go this far. Tears welled up in Bethany's eyes. How could you? Both of you. Was this some kind of sick game? I shook my head. No, Bethany. I only found out recently about your connection to Robert Hendricks. Anthony didn't know either. We've all been pawns in a much bigger game. Just then, Robert Hendricks himself walked in, his face a mask of concern. What's going on here? Bethany? Mrs. Lawson? I turned to face him, my chin held high. Mr. Hendricks, I think it's time we all laid our cards on the table. Your daughter and my husband have been having an affair that I believe you orchestrated to manipulate both our companies. Robert's face hardened. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Lawson. I suggest you think carefully before you continue. Oh, I have, I replied, pulling out a file from my bag. I've thought about it very carefully, and I have proof of your attempts to sabotage the merger, using your daughter and my husband as unwitting pawns. The room fell silent as I laid out the evidence, emails, financial records, and testimonies from other employees. With each revelation, I could see Robert's composure crumbling. Bethany turned to her father, her voice shaking. Dad, is this true? Did you use me? Robert's shoulders sagged. Bethany, I only wanted what was best for the company, for our family. By destroying mine? I interjected, my hand resting on my belly. Anthony's eyes widened as he finally registered my pregnancy. Kate, I nodded. Yes, Anthony, I'm pregnant. With your child. A child who deserves better than the lies and manipulation we've all been caught up in. The next few hours were a blur of confessions, tears, and hard truths. By the end of it, Robert Hendricks had resigned, Anthony had been dismissed, and Bethany had walked out, unable to face any of us. As I left the office building for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself, and come out stronger on the other side. 6 months later, I cradled my newborn daughter in my arms, gazing out at the Chicago skyline from my corner office. I had been promoted to vice president after exposing the corruption within Hendricks Corporation. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was one I had fought for and earned. Anthony and I had divorced, but we were working on building a new relationship as co-parents. Bethany had reached out, apologizing and asking for a fresh start, and Melissa, my unexpected ally through it all, had become a dear friend and my daughter's godmother. As I looked down at my sleeping child, I realized that sometimes life's greatest challenges lead to our most profound transformations. I had lost a husband, but gained a family. I had faced betrayal, but found my own strength. And in the end, I had achieved the balance I had always dreamed of. A fulfilling career and the joy of motherhood. I was Kate Lawson, single mother, corporate executive, and survivor. And this was just the beginning of our story.